All right, so everybody, thanks so much for listening to us on the podcast. If you're listening to us for the first time, please like, subscribe, share. If you are listening to us on the radio or some other platform, please tell your friends and your family about this. We are interviewing what I think is somebody that's done a lot for CCI, Canine Companions for Independence. We've done a lot of interviews on them recently and even in the past, and the great effort they're doing to help people with disabilities, the veterans too in general. Mary Clare Matthews is on, and she's going to be talking a little bit about what her and her family has done in the past and are still doing with Canine Companions for Independence. So, Mary, first of all, thanks for coming on. Greatly appreciate your time this afternoon.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, great. So let's talk about this. Can you tell the viewers a little bit about you in general and how you guys got involved in CCI in general?
Sure. My husband and I both grew up in Austin, Texas, and we actually both went to school in Nashville, Tennessee. We went to Vanderbilt, and we didn't know each other in high school, but met there. And after graduating, we both moved to San Diego. He was doing his master's degree there, and I followed him out there. And at the time, I was working for a software startup company that was back in early 2000s. I want to say it was 1999 when that whole internet tech bubble was happening. And I wanted to get involved. My husband is just an extreme dog lover. I mean, to the point where his dogs take precedent over me practically and our kids. So we've always had, at the time we had a lab who he trained to get beer out of the refrigerator by himself and bring it to him on the couch, and would literally lay in the middle of the driveway and not let us leave when we were leaving for the day. Wow. And so Jamie, my husband, has a very strong bond with his dogs. Since then, we've had a couple of Great Danes and some Golden Retrievers. And at the time, I just really wanted to be involved with something that I could connect to and that also gave a volunteer opportunity to people. And so in the late it was 1999, 2000, I think Oceanside was the only headquarters for CCI, but I don't know that they had the extensive regional offices that they have today. Right. And it was a smaller operation. We had they had a facility there where they had dog trainers who worked on a daily basis and would train their incoming litter of dogs to be ready to be matched with individuals who needed, a full-time companion for a variety of reasons. Looking back, I think that the majority of those folks were physically handicapped. And as we've gone through the years, we understand the need for companions for all other reasons. I mean, we had, there are now, children who suffer from just anxiety and other things that are just mental debility, things that are very debilitating for them in their daily lives. And so I think that I was a dog washer, which was actually one of the only things you could do as a volunteer. I think Canine Companions is really interesting really their staff is pretty lean, and their dog trainers need to be really equipped to train dogs. And that's not what I went to school for. And so they have a highly qualified staff for actually training dogs. And I think that, but they really pride themselves on being a people organization and helping those who have disabilities. And so there's also this element of creating a match for dogs and individuals who are in need. And so that requires people to read applications and understand what those disabilities are. And does this warrant, a trained CCI dog? So fast forward to today, we have a family foundation that my husband and I have become a lot more involved in. We actually started a nonprofit here in Austin. It's called Explore Austin. It's a leadership mentor program. But at that same time, we got really involved with the organizations we support. I think as someone who donates either time or money, it's just really important to understand what you're giving to and be a part of it. I personally just really like to be either personally involved or have a family member personally involved, not so much for a checks and balances, but to just make sure that it aligns with what we want to support and what our values are. And so, and organizations, I volunteer for several organizations, and I think they want donors who are personally attached to the cause and the mission. I think they want that match. And so they don't want donors who are just, who are not invested in their mission. And so I think the only way to know that is to actually personally be involved. When we moved from San Diego, we had our first child in 2003 and we moved. And at the time, there was a Southwest regional office for Canine Companions I think it was in Arizona, and they might still have an office there, but I was so sad to leave. Right before we left, my husband did a fundraiser for them. And at the time, they actually didn't really have very structured fundraisers. I think the life of nonprofits today are so different than what they were. It was grassroots effort. You had people just sort of, it wasn't as much of a business as it is today. And I think that back then he did a paddle boarding. He paddleboarded from Oceanside to La Jolla and raised money to support them. And I think at the time, I mean, he raised like $15,000, which is a lot for, 1999 or whatever. And there weren't a lot of ways to support. And before we left, we went to a graduation at CCI, which is like the most emotional event you can attend. Yeah. I mean, the seeing behind the scenes of the training and matching with those individuals is pretty emotional, because what happens is, sometimes it can be very frustrating for the person who is coming and learning how to live with their new companion and what all commands they need to understand and how they can really bond and also benefit to the best that they are able to. I mean, those dogs can really do a lot. Turn on lights. I mean, remind people when to take medication, wake a veteran who's having a bad dream. I mean, there's just so many things that those dogs have been trained to do. And so once they get matched with their potential owner in the future, that training is tiring and emotional. And I just think back to when I was there and I was at a training, because I was able to see one as a volunteer, and one of the dogs ended up doing something that the organization, I think it was like a growl or a nibble or something, and he got released immediately. And it was so devastating for the person who had been matched with him, and they quickly matched that individual with somebody else. But I mean, these are just examples of things that the organization has to be super careful and very strict about their policies and what they'll tolerate. And I could have been speaking incorrectly. I don't really remember what the incident was. I just remember that, they are very well trained in knowing what's going to be allowed and what isn't, and what's, what concerns them. And so, I think that all of that is super emotional for both the staff and those who are inheriting this wonderful gift of a canine companion, and then those dogs who are working so hard. I mean, some dogs you could tell were cut out for the job, and others were not, and so they would get released. But so fast forward, and we got really involved with the Lone Star office here in Dallas. But before that, we were lucky enough to get a reject dog, Buster, who came from the Virginia. I think there was a Virginia office, and he was released because he would have seizures during the training. So it was clearly not a good match. It was a stressful situation for him. But super trained dog. He would surf in San Diego on a board with Jamie on his own. So, like, he was clearly cut out to be well trained, just not up for the 24-hour job of being a companion. And so we've since just really been financial supporters at Baylor Scott and White in Dallas. Is the Dallas office is literally adjacent to the hospital, and Baylor Scott and White has invested a lot in CCI, which I think is such a good reflection of kind of where we are today. Hospitals and the medical industry are acknowledging that some of these things are, I mean, that this type of a program can benefit individuals from a health perspective. That probably wouldn't have happened in 99, I would think. I mean, and so they have been a partner to CCI, and we were able to attend a graduation 2 years ago, and it was exactly how I remembered it. It was super emotional, and those individuals, you could tell, were gaining just such a wonderful, it's kind of like a start to a new life. That most of these people have caretakers or people who are just constantly taking care of them. And I think that it's just a relief to have, I mean, for everyone. I think for those folks who have a companion, it becomes this codependency between the dog and that individual, which is kind of an irreplaceable relationship. So.
No, I agree. And thank you for really going in depth about your story and how that's, because you answered a lot of the questions. So we'll go through some short stuff here since you answered many questions. So you did talk about, you started out with bathing the dogs. I've done that personally. I think it's quite an experience if you love these dogs, like you said, in general. At CCI, and I did that at the one in the Southeast region over in Orlando, where I'm from.
Okay.
But anyways, regardless, is that the kind of the extent to the volunteering that you personally did?
It really was.
Okay.
It really was. We have put our names in for a foster situation that we that's a hard job to get. And when we moved here, it was even harder because we didn't have a regional office adjacent to us. I think that it's funny that I'm talking to you today, because I recently reached out to the coordinator in Dallas to see if there's an opportunity. I think we would be ready for that. I think that is a huge responsibility. And at the time, we've have 3 kids who are now teenagers. And so we're in a little different boat, but as being young children, I think that would have been pretty difficult for them and for all of us, just because we grow so attached to our pets. And having to release them would be difficult. But the people who do it are total rock stars, because they take these dogs out. They do what, they're prepping them for the real training that's ahead.
I do want to be respectful of your time, so I'll wind down with these last few questions. You've had so many dogs, and you spoke about that throughout the interview. Can you just give kind of a short synopsis? Because people that are listening that are dog lovers, they know this in general, but I'm sure there's people that are not dog lovers, or maybe they've never just had a dog personally in their life. Can you talk about the effect that dogs have had on your life, Jamie's life, and even your kids too?
Yeah, I mean, the best way I can describe it is that dogs are like just epitomize unconditional love. I mean, I think that dogs love you for who you are. There's no judgment. And I think as humans, like we kind of are all seeking that. I mean, that's actually as a parent, that's what you're trying to give your children is unconditional love. And I think that it's kind of sometimes hard to do because they do things that make you really mad. But dogs are literally just, that is how they live in this world, just sort of unconditionally. And so for those people who, I have a grandmother right now who's 98 years old, and I think she would benefit. I mean, she lives in a assisted living care center, but like there's science behind just the fact that that's a lonely life when a lot of your friends and your family, your age, your husband has passed away, and dogs can really fill that void. And I was reading the report on the VA program at CCI, and just to think that, having that companionship and that constant unconditional person beside you, I mean, you just can't, you kind of can't quantify that impact. I mean, those individuals cannot, I mean, it's just unquantifiable, probably the increase in their quality of life and their feeling of, companionship and probably not loneliness, because once you have a dog by your side, it's almost like the best of all worlds. So
I want to wrap up with the last 5 minutes with you speaking about the foundations. Obviously, it's Jamie's foundation, along with, I know you're all involved in it. So if you could just talk about that family foundation, also explore Austin, which you said you're involved in too, and where people can help out you guys in general.
Well, we are a small family foundation. And it's Jamie, my husband, comes from a long lineage of very, very generous people. I think he grew up with that you give back to your community if you can, you give to those who don't have. And so it's been a fun ride to be married to somebody who is such a giver. And I think that I see it through my own kids. I have an 18-year-old son who has some of those qualities that Jamie has, which is, I'm so thankful that he does. I got involved from the foundation side with just more being a part of foundation, local organizations. CCI is not necessarily local to us, but I consider it because really they reach out to individuals nationally. I mean, you don't have to live in Dallas to get a dog. It's just, you go to Dallas to get trained with your dog, and then you bring your dog home. And I think that their setup is very effective for what they need to accomplish. I mean, they can't have centers all over the place, but they can have these regionally located centers that really are super effective. We are primarily involved with organizations. I mean, pets are we do focus on those who are underserved, children who are underserved, and organizations that help the lives of individuals in need. And so Jamie started Explore Austin long ago, and we love to be involved with that. We now have stepped away, and we have a wonderful staff, and we have a local community that's very involved with it. And I've just become involved with 4ATX, which is tied to Austin FC, our new soccer club. And I'm really involved with Texas Book Festival, which is super fun. So there's a lot of local, I think Austin is like the capital of nonprofit world.
Seems like it, yeah.
It is. But I will say that that affects the community that we live in. If you live in a community, I mean, some people feel like it's saturated with organizations, but really it just means there's a lot of people who want to give back to their community. And I think that it's a great opportunity for younger folks who are just trying to meet other people, because usually you can find something you're super interested in, and it's such a great way to meet people who have like-minded desire to help or interests. So I have really, we had a homelessness problem for the last 4 years. Mobile Loaves and Fishes, it's Alan Graham with Community First has built a model community outside of Austin for homelessness. And I think that his model has people from all over the country have come to visit to see what kind of structure. There's accountability in place. So it's not for all homelessness, but it does take care of a large population that has not been served. And so that's another cool thing, is seeing how your organization can impact other organizations across the country, and how those shared ideas can affect change on a more global level.
So as we end, where can people find more about you, all these foundations that you're involved in? I know
Well,
there's so many. I don't want you to give like a 2-page list, but
yeah. Well, it's funny. I'm actually a realtor here in Austin, which I
right.
love. I love being able to show my hometown, even though it's changed a lot. And funny enough, I lived in Rhode Island one summer. I lived in
Okay.
Newport, Rhode Island. Some friends and I drove up from school, and just our parents were like, you can do that, but you got to pay for we're not paying for a dime of what you're doing. And so we all got jobs and rented a house, and it was so fun. But I have had a really fun time showing off Austin to people who are moving in. We have a large influx of folks moving in, so that's been fun. I do my own little residential redos, which is also fun. And then I'm super plugged into the community, because I think that is the most fun way.
Right.
I'm getting too old to go out to bars and clubs. I like going to events and just, I was involved with the Trail Foundation a few years ago, which was a super fun, because I used to be a runner. Now I exercise in a different way, but so it's just a great way to get to know people and support all these people who are doing such good work. Most of these organizations are really filling a void, and people are giving their time and really making a difference.
Well, we will definitely keep our eye on you, Jamie,
Jamie
you,
and Mary Claire, yes, for
yeah,
sure.
Mary, the kids and everything. We'll definitely do this again sometime, and I'll edit and I'll send it to you. But again, Mary Claire Matthews, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time. It's just great what you guys are doing in general in Austin, and also with CCI.
Well, thank you for having me.